Dr. Ryan Torres had always been a night owl. Working alone at the mountain research station didn't bother him one bit. While most people were fast asleep in their warm beds, he was out here in the Canadian wilderness, checking weather instruments and collecting data about the atmosphere. It was just past midnight when everything changed forever. Ryan was walking back to his small cabin, carrying his equipment bag and humming an old song his grandmother used to sing. The stars were incredibly bright that night, scattered across the sky like tiny diamonds. He stopped for a moment to appreciate the view, something he did almost every clear night. That's when he saw it. A streak of light shot across the sky, but this wasn't a shooting star. It was too big, too bright, and moving in a strange pattern. The object seemed to wobble through the air before disappearing behind the tall pine trees about half a mile away. A few seconds later, Ryan heard a sound that made his heart race, a deep, rumbling crash that echoed through the mountain valley. "What in the world was that?" Ryan whispered to himself. His scientific mind immediately started working. Could it have been a meteor? Maybe a piece of space junk falling back to Earth? Or perhaps a small plane in trouble? Whatever it was, Ryan knew he had to investigate. If someone was hurt out there, he might be their only hope for rescue. Ryan quickly grabbed his emergency backpack from the cabin. He packed his first aid kit, flashlight, radio, and some basic supplies. The crash site wasn't too far away, but these mountains could be dangerous at night. He'd learned that lesson during his 5 years working at this remote station. The walk through the forest was eerie. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, creating dancing shadows between the trees. Every few steps, he'd stop and listen for any sounds, maybe someone calling for help or the hiss of escaping gas from a damaged aircraft. But all he heard was the usual nighttime forest sounds, owls hooting in the distance and small animals rustling through the underbrush. After about 20 minutes of careful hiking, Ryan smelled something strange in the air. It wasn't smoke or burning fuel like he'd expected. Instead, it was almost sweet, like the scent of flowers mixed with something metallic. As he got closer to where he thought the crash had happened, the smell grew stronger. Then he saw the light. It wasn't the orange glow of fire. This light was soft and blue, pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat. Ryan's steps became more cautious as he approached what looked like a clearing in the trees. When he finally pushed through the last group of pine branches, his jaw dropped. There, in a perfectly round crater about 30 feet wide, sat something. That definitely wasn't from Earth. The craft looked like nothing Ryan had ever seen in any textbook or science magazine. It was sleek and curved, about the size of a small car, with a surface that seemed to shimmer between silver and deep blue. Strange symbols glowed softly along its sides, pulsing in rhythm with that blue light he'd seen from far away. "This can't be real," Ryan muttered, but his scientific training kicked in. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures, though he wondered if anyone would ever believe what he was seeing. As he walked around the craft looking for any obvious damage, he noticed that one section seemed different from the rest. It looked like a door or hatch that had been forced open from the inside. Ryan's heart started beating faster. If this was some kind of vehicle, then someone or something had been flying it. That's when he heard the sound. It was soft, almost musical, but there was pain in it. Someone was hurt and trying not to make noise. Ryan followed the sound to the far side of the crater, where the trees cast deep shadows. And there she was. Ryan's first thought was that his eyes were playing tricks on him. The figure sitting against a large boulder looked human in shape, but everything else about her was completely impossible. She was tall, probably close to 7 feet, with skin that seemed to glow with a soft silver light. Thin blue lines ran just under her skin like glowing veins, pulsing gently with the same rhythm as the crashed ship. Her hair was long and white, almost like moonlight given form. But what really caught Ryan's attention were the crystal-like formations growing from her temples. They looked like a crown made of pure light, beautiful and obviously important somehow. She was clearly hurt. Dark blue liquid, which Ryan realized must be her blood, was seeping from a cut on her left arm. She was pressing her right hand against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but she looked weak and scared. Their eyes met, and Ryan felt something he'd never experienced before. Her eyes were large and opalescent, like looking into deep water with sunlight dancing on the surface. There was intelligence there and fear, but also something that seemed almost hopeful. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Ryan knew he should probably be terrified. Everything he'd learned about the universe had just been turned upside down. But looking at this injured being, all he could think about was helping her. Slowly, Ryan set down his backpack and pulled out his first aid kit. He held it up so she could see it, then pointed to her injured arm. He tried to make his voice as gentle as possible. "I want to help you," he said, even though he was sure she couldn't understand him. "You're hurt, and I know how to treat wounds." The alien princess, because Ryan somehow knew that's what she was, watched him carefully. Those strange crystal formations on her head began to glow a little brighter, and Ryan felt an odd tingling sensation in his mind, like someone was gently touching his thoughts. After what felt like forever, she slowly extended her injured arm toward him. Ryan moved very carefully, like he was approaching a wild animal that might run away at any sudden movement. As he got closer, he could see that her skin wasn't just silver. It had an almost pearl-like quality that seemed to shift and change in the light. The blue lines under her skin were definitely some kind of circulatory system, but unlike anything in human biology. "This might sting a little," Ryan warned as he began cleaning the wound. The cut was deep but clean, probably from a piece of metal during the crash. To his surprise, she didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she watched his face with intense curiosity, as if she was trying to figure out what kind of creature he was. Ryan found himself talking to her as he worked, explaining what he was doing even though she couldn't understand. "I'm cleaning out any dirt first," he said, dabbing gently with antiseptic. "Then I'll bandage it up to stop the bleeding. You'll be okay." As he wrapped the bandage around her arm, something amazing happened. The crystal formations on her head suddenly flared with bright light, and Ryan heard a voice inside his mind. It wasn't his own thoughts. This voice was definitely feminine and had a musical quality to it. "You help me." "Why?" Ryan nearly dropped the bandage in shock. She was speaking to him, somehow communicating directly into his mind through those crystals on her head. He looked up into those incredible eyes and gave the only answer that made sense to him. "Because you needed help," he said simply. The alien princess stared at him for a long moment, and Ryan could sense her confusion. In her world, apparently, helping a stranger wasn't something people just did. There had to be a reason, some benefit or obligation. But Ryan's answer was completely honest. He'd helped her for the same reason he'd help anyone who was hurt and alone, because it was the right thing to do. As the night wore on, Ryan learned that his simple act of kindness had just changed the course of two worlds forever. He had no idea that the beautiful, mysterious being he'd just saved was royalty from a distant planet, or that she'd been running away from a life she never wanted. All he knew was that when he looked into her eyes, he saw someone who had been alone for far too long. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he knew that neither of them would ever be alone again. 3 weeks had passed since that incredible night when Ryan's world changed forever. The alien princess, who had told him her name was Zara through their strange mental connection, was slowly recovering in an old abandoned cabin about 2 miles from his research station. Ryan had discovered the cabin during his 2nd year working in these mountains, and it had become the perfect hiding place for the most important secret on Earth. Every morning, Ryan would wake up with butterflies in his stomach. Not from fear anymore, but from excitement. He was learning things about the universe that no human had ever known before, and it was all happening because he'd chosen to help someone who needed it. The cabin was small and rustic, with wooden walls and a stone fireplace that actually worked. Ryan had brought over blankets, food, and medical supplies without anyone at the research station noticing. As far as his supervisor knew, Ryan was just doing his usual routine of checking equipment and collecting data. Nobody suspected that he was also taking care of a visitor from another world. Zara was unlike anyone Ryan had ever met, and not just because she was 7 feet tall with glowing skin. She was curious about everything. Absolutely everything. She would spend hours watching him make simple meals, fascinated by how he used fire to cook food. On her planet, apparently, they had technology that could create any meal instantly, but they had forgotten the simple pleasure of cooking. "You change the food with heat," Zara would say through their mental link, those crystal formations on her head glowing softly as she communicated. "But why? Your machines could do this faster." Ryan would laugh and try to explain. "Sometimes the slow way is better. It gives you time to think, and it makes the food taste different. Plus, I like doing things with my hands." This concept seemed to amaze her. On her world, which she called Kepler in their conversations, everything was efficient and logical. People did things the fastest, most practical way possible. The idea of doing something slowly just because it felt good was completely foreign to her. But Zara was a fast learner. Within days, she had figured out how to use Ryan's portable camping stove. She was surprisingly gentle despite her size and strength, carefully stirring soup and watching bread toast like it was the most fascinating thing in the universe. The most incredible thing about Zara, though, was her ability to sense emotions. Those crystal formations weren't just beautiful, they were like emotional antennas. She could feel what Ryan was feeling, sometimes even before he realized it himself. "You are sad today," she said one rainy morning as Ryan sat drinking coffee by the cabin window. Ryan paused. He hadn't even admitted to himself that he was feeling down. "Yeah, I guess I am. I got an email yesterday. My funding is getting cut. I have to leave this place in a few weeks." Zara moved closer, and Ryan felt a warm, comforting sensation in his mind. It was like having someone give you a mental hug. "This place is important to you," she observed. "It's been my home for 5 years, Ryan explained. "I love the mountains, the quiet, the work I do here, and now—" He gestured around the cabin. "Now I don't know what's going to happen to any of this." Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised him. She placed her large, warm hand on his shoulder. Her skin always felt slightly warm, like she had a gentle fever, but it was comforting rather than concerning. "On my world," she said slowly, "I was also told I had to leave a place I wanted to stay." This was the first time Zara had really opened up about her past. Ryan had gathered bits and pieces. She was some kind of royalty. She had been running away from something, and she definitely couldn't go home. But she had never talked about the details. "What happened?" Ryan asked gently. Zara's crystal formations dimmed slightly, which Ryan had learned meant she was feeling sad or troubled. "My father wanted me to marry someone I did not choose. Someone who would help unite our people during difficult times. I was, how do you say, a piece in a game. Not a person with my own thoughts." Ryan felt a flash of anger on her behalf. "That's terrible. You should get to choose who you want to be with." "That is what I thought," Zara said with something that might have been a smile. "So I took a ship and ran away. I did not plan to crash on your world, but—" She looked at him with those incredible opalescent eyes. "Perhaps it was meant to happen." Over the following days, Ryan noticed changes in both of them. Zara was becoming more expressive, more emotional. She would laugh at his silly jokes, even, the ones that weren't very funny. She got excited when she successfully cooked something without burning it. She even cried a little when Ryan showed her a nature documentary about whales, moved by the beautiful songs they sang to each other across the ocean. "My people stopped showing emotions like this long ago," she explained. "We decided feelings made us weak and caused problems. But watching you, learning from you, I think maybe we lost something important." Ryan was changing too, though he didn't fully understand how. Being around Zara seemed to be sharpening his senses somehow. He could read the weather better than ever before, noticing tiny changes in air pressure and humidity that he'd never picked up on. More surprisingly, he was getting better at reading people's moods, even during his brief video calls with colleagues. The peaceful routine was shattered one morning when Ryan's radio crackled to life with an emergency broadcast. All stations. This is military command. We have reports of unidentified aircraft activity in your area. Remain indoors and report any unusual sightings immediately." Ryan and Zara looked at each other with growing alarm. They both knew what this meant. Someone had noticed the crash site. "They are looking for me," Zara said, her crystal formations flickering with worry. "We can handle this," Ryan said, but his voice wasn't as confident as his words. "We just need to be careful." That afternoon, Ryan hiked back to his research station to check his equipment and maintain his normal routine. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. As he was calibrating his weather instruments, he noticed fresh tire tracks near the station that hadn't been there the day before. His supervisor, Dr. Peterson, called him that evening. "Ryan, we've got some military folks who want to survey the area tomorrow. Something about checking for debris from a satellite that came down. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Ryan's heart started racing. "Tomorrow? All over the area?" "Yeah, they'll probably want to check all the remote locations, including that old cabin up the mountain trail. You know, the one you mentioned in your reports last year." Ryan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. If military teams searched the cabin tomorrow, they would find Zara. And he had no doubt about what would happen next. She would disappear into some government facility, becoming a test subject instead of a person. That night, Ryan sat with Zara by the fireplace, trying to figure out what to do. She had been quiet since he told her about the planned search, her crystal formations dim and pulsing slowly. "I should leave," she said finally. "Go deeper into the mountains. You have helped me enough, and I do not want to cause problems for you." "Absolutely not," Ryan said immediately. "You're still recovering from the crash, and besides—" He paused, realizing something that had been growing in his heart for weeks. "I don't want you to be alone anymore." Zara turned to look at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, her crystal formations blazed with bright, warm light. "You would give up your life here for someone like me?" she asked. Ryan thought about his comfortable job, his predictable routine, his quiet life in the mountains. Then he looked at Zara, this incredible being who had shown him that the universe was so much bigger and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. Someone who had taught him that connection and understanding could bridge any gap, even one between different species. "For someone like you," Ryan said, reaching over to take her large, warm hand in his. "Zara, I would give up everything." Outside the cabin, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Tomorrow would bring challenges they couldn't even imagine. But tonight, two beings from different worlds had found something neither had expected to find. Someone who truly understood them. As they sat together planning their escape into the wilderness, neither Ryan nor Zara knew that their story was about to become much bigger than just the two of them. Forces were already in motion that would change not just their lives, but the relationship between Earth and the stars forever. Dawn was still an hour away when Ryan and Zara left the cabin for the last time. They moved through the forest like shadows, carrying only the most essential supplies in Ryan's hiking backpack. Every few minutes, Ryan would stop and listen for the sound of helicopters or vehicles. But so far, the mountains remained quiet except for the normal sounds of wildlife waking up. Zara had changed her appearance as much as possible. She wore Ryan's largest jacket with the hood pulled up, hiding her distinctive crystal crown formations. Ryan had given her his darkest sunglasses to cover her unusual eyes, and she had somehow dimmed the glow of her skin until it was barely noticeable. Even so, anyone who looked closely would immediately know she wasn't human. "How much further? To the old mining trail?" Ryan whispered, as they carefully picked their way down a steep slope. 2 miles, Zara replied through their mental connection. She had gotten much better at communicating this way, and it meant they could talk without making any sound that might give away their position. The plan was simple but risky. Ryan knew these mountains better than anyone, including several abandoned mining tunnels from the 1800s that weren't on any modern maps. If they could reach the old Silver Point mine, they could hide there while figuring out their next move. The tunnel system was extensive and had multiple exits, making it perfect for avoiding search teams. But first, they had to get there without being spotted. As the sun started to rise, they heard the first helicopter in the distance. The sound made Ryan's heart race, but Zara seemed oddly calm. "On my world, I was often hunted during training exercises," she explained as they crouched, behind a cluster of large rocks. "I learned to move without being detected." "Training for what?" Ryan asked. "To be the perfect princess," Zara said, with what Ryan had learned was her version of a bitter laugh. "Perfect at hiding when necessary, perfect at fighting when required, perfect at sacrificing myself for the good of others." The helicopter passed overhead without slowing down, but Ryan knew it would be back. Military search patterns were thorough and systematic. They would cover every square mile of these mountains until they found what they were looking for. After another hour of careful hiking, they reached an old dirt road that hadn't been used in decades. Ryan was about to suggest they follow it to save time when Zara suddenly grabbed his arm. "Stop," she whispered urgently. "Someone is coming." Ryan listened but couldn't hear anything unusual. Then he remembered that Zara's senses were much sharper than his. If she said someone was coming, he believed her. They quickly hid behind a fallen tree just as a convoy of black SUVs came rumbling down the old road. Through the windows, Ryan could see soldiers in camouflage uniforms and people in dark suits carrying electronic equipment. They were obviously searching for something specific, and Ryan had no doubt about what that something was. But as the convoy passed, Zara suddenly stiffened beside him. Her crystal formations began glowing brighter despite her efforts to keep them dim. "What's wrong?" Ryan asked. "There are others," Zara said, and for the first time since he'd known her, she sounded truly frightened. "Not your people. My people." Ryan felt his blood turn cold. "What do you mean, your people?" "They followed me here. I can sense their ship's energy signature." Zara's voice in his mind was shaking. "They have come to take me home." Before Ryan could respond, the air above them began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then, impossible as it seemed, 3 sleek spacecraft simply appeared out of nowhere, hovering silently about 50 feet overhead. They looked similar to Zara's crashed ship, but larger and more intimidating, with weapon systems that were clearly visible along their hulls. One of the ships landed in a clearing about 100 yards away. Ryan watched in amazement as a ramp descended from its belly and 3 figures emerged. They were definitely the same species as Zara, tall and elegant with that same silver skin. But there were important differences. Their crystal formations were darker, almost black, and they moved with the precise efficiency of trained soldiers. The leader of the group was clearly male and carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. His crystal crown was larger than Zara's and pulsed with dark energy. When he spoke, his voice carried across the distance with an authority that made Ryan instinctively want to step back. "Princess Zara, the alien commander called out in English, though his accent made the words sound strange and formal. "We know you are here. End this foolishness and return home where you belong." Zara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Ryan saw something he'd never seen before: royal authority mixed with stubborn determination. "I will not go back, Kale," she called out, standing up from behind the fallen tree. "I made my choice." The alien commander, Kyle, looked genuinely surprised to see her, but his surprise quickly turned to confusion when he noticed Ryan standing beside her. "What is this primitive creature doing with you?" Kyle demanded. "Has it harmed you? Threatened you in some way?" "Ryan has done nothing but help me," Zara said firmly. "He saved my life when I crashed, and he has treated me with more kindness than I ever received on our home world." Kale's dark crystal formations began pulsing faster, which Ryan realized was probably a sign of anger or agitation. "You cannot be serious," Kale said. "You would choose this lower life form over your own species? Over your duty to your people?" Ryan felt anger flare up inside him at being called a lower life form, but Zara's response surprised him even more than Kale's insult. "Ryan is not lower than us," she said, her own crystal formations now blazing with bright light. "He is different, and in many ways he is better than us. He shows compassion without expecting anything in return. He helps others simply because it is right. When did our people forget how to do that?" The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the human military convoy returning. The soldiers had obviously noticed the alien ships and were racing back to investigate. In a matter of minutes, this remote mountain clearing was about to become the site of humanity's first official contact with an alien species. But it wasn't going to be the peaceful diplomatic meeting that scientists had always imagined. This was going to be a confrontation. "You have brought chaos to this world," Kyle accused Zara. "These primitives are not ready for contact with advanced civilizations. Your presence here violates every protocol we have." "Maybe those protocols are wrong," Zara shot back. "Maybe we have been too isolated, too afraid to learn from others." Ryan found his voice, despite the surreal situation. "Look, I don't know what's happening between you two, but those soldiers are going to be here any minute, and I'm guessing they're not going to be in a mood to talk things through peacefully." Kale looked at Ryan with what might have been surprise. "The primitive speaks wisdom," he admitted grudgingly. The sound of helicopters was getting closer now, and Ryan could see dust clouds from the approaching vehicles. They were trapped between two forces, neither of which would be satisfied with anything less than getting Zara. "There is still time to leave quietly," Kale said to Zara. "Come with us now, and we can avoid an incident that might damage both our worlds." Zara looked at Ryan, and he could see the terrible choice she was facing. Go with her people and abandon the life she had chosen, or stay and risk starting an interplanetary conflict. Ryan made the decision for both of them. "We're not going anywhere," he said, taking Zara's hand in his. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me first." Kyle stared at him for a long moment, then actually laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing. "You would fight me for her? You who could not even scratch my armor with your primitive weapons?" "Maybe not," Ryan said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "But I'd try, because that's what you do for someone you care about." For the first time since landing, Kyle looked genuinely puzzled. The concept of someone willingly facing impossible odds for another person seemed as foreign to him as it had once been to Zara. The first helicopter crested the ridge just as Kyle made his decision. Instead of trying to force Zara to come with him, he stepped back toward his ship. "This is not over, Princess," he called out. "Your people need you. Our sun is dying faster than predicted, and without unity we face extinction. Think carefully about what your freedom is worth." As the alien ships began to shimmer and disappear back into invisibility, the human military forces arrived in full force. Soldiers poured out of vehicles while helicopters circled overhead, all of them trying to process what they had just witnessed. Ryan and Zara found themselves surrounded, but instead of feeling trapped, Ryan felt oddly relieved. The secret was finally out. No more hiding, no more running through the forest like fugitives. Now the real adventure could begin. Colonel Jackson, a stern-looking woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, approached them with her weapon lowered but ready. "I'm going to ask you this once," she said calmly. "Who are you, and what just happened here?" Ryan looked at Zara, who nodded slightly. Together they had faced hunters from two different worlds. Now they would face the consequences of their choice to be together. But whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The government facility looked nothing like the cold, sterile laboratories Ryan had imagined from science fiction movies. Instead, it felt more like a comfortable research campus, with large windows, plants in the hallways, and even a small cafeteria that served surprisingly good coffee. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead scientist assigned to their case, had made it clear from day one that Zara was a guest, not a prisoner. "The world has gone absolutely crazy," Dr. Rodriguez said as she showed Ryan and Zara the news coverage on her tablet. "Half the people think you're here to invade us, and the other half think you're some kind of angel sent to save humanity." It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation in the mountains. The footage from military cameras had somehow leaked to the internet, and now everyone on Earth knew that aliens were real. Social media was exploding with theories, memes, and heated debates about what it all meant. Zara watched the news with fascination, her crystal formations glowing softly as she processed the range of human reactions. "Your people are very emotional about everything," she observed. "Yeah, we're kind of known for that," Ryan said with a laugh. "We feel everything very strongly, good and bad." What the public didn't know was the real reason why Zara couldn't simply go home, even if she wanted to. The medical test had revealed something that shocked everyone, including Zara herself. Dr. Michael Chen, the facility's chief medical officer, had spent days running every scan and test he could think of. When he finally called Ryan and Zara into his office, his expression was a mixture of wonder and concern. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Chen said, pulling up brain scans on his computer. "Zara, your neural pathways have been completely rewiring themselves since you've been on Earth. It's like your brain is adapting to our planet's electromagnetic field." Zara leaned forward to study the colorful images. "What does this mean?" "It means you're becoming neurologically bonded to Earth itself," Dr. Chen explained. "Your crystal formations aren't just decorative. They're part of your nervous system, and they've been slowly synchronizing with Earth's magnetic field for weeks now." Ryan felt his heart sink. "Is that bad?" Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. "We don't know for sure, but based on what Zara has told us about her home planet's different electromagnetic properties, attempting to return there now could be extremely dangerous, possibly fatal." The room went quiet except for the soft humming of medical equipment. Ryan reached over and took Zara's hand, feeling the familiar warmth of her skin. "So I'm trapped here," Zara said quietly. "Not trapped," Dr. Rodriguez said, gently. "But yes, Earth appears to be your home now, whether you originally planned it or not." But the really shocking discovery came a few days later. Dr. Chen had been studying the scans of Ryan's brain as well, curious about how prolonged contact with Zara might have affected him. "Ryan, I need to show you something," Dr. Chen said, calling him into the lab alone. "Your brain activity has changed too. Look at this." The screen showed 2 brain scans side by side, one from Ryan's physical exam when he first arrived at the facility, and another from just yesterday. "Your pattern recognition abilities have increased by almost 300%, Dr. Chen said. "Your emotional sensitivity is off the charts, and most interestingly, you're showing signs of electromagnetic sensitivity that humans don't normally possess." Ryan stared at the scans. What are you saying? I'm saying that you and Zara aren't just emotionally connected anymore. You're becoming neurologically linked. Whatever process is bonding her to Earth is also bonding both of you to each other. The implications hit Ryan like a physical blow. So if she goes back to her planet, you'd both suffer severe psychological trauma, possibly permanent damage, Dr. Chen said quietly. You're becoming two halves of the same consciousness. That evening, Ryan found Zara sitting alone in the facility's garden, staring up at the stars. Her crystal formations were dim. Pulsing slowly with the rhythm that Ryan had learned meant she was deeply troubled. Kale sent another message today, she said without looking at him. Ryan sat down beside her on the bench. What did he say? My people's situation is getting worse. The solar flares are increasing and the different factions are fighting instead of working together. Kale says they need me to unite them, or they'll all die when they try to evacuate. Ryan felt a familiar stab of pain in his chest. Over the past few weeks, Kyle had been sending regular communications, each one more urgent than the last. Zara's home world was facing extinction, and her royal bloodline was apparently the key to convincing the warring factions to cooperate. Billions of people, Ryan, Zara continued, her voice heavy with guilt. Billions of lives that could be saved if I just went home and married the person my father chose for me. But the doctors said, I know what they said, Zara interrupted. That going back might kill me, but staying here definitely kills my entire species. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars that looked so peaceful from Earth but hid so much struggle and tragedy. Finally, he spoke the words that had been eating at him for days. Maybe you should go back, he said quietly. Zara turned to look at him, her crystal formations flaring with surprise and pain. What? Maybe. I've been selfish, Ryan said, forcing himself to meet her eyes. Maybe I've been thinking about what I want instead of what's right, if your people need you. No, Zara said firmly, moving closer to him on the bench. No, I will not go back to being a piece in someone else's game. And I will not leave you. Not now, not ever. But your people will have to find another way, Zara said, taking his hands in hers. Ryan, before I met you, I thought love was weakness. I thought caring about someone meant giving up who you are. But you showed me that love makes us stronger, not weaker. It gives us something worth fighting for. Ryan felt tears starting to form in his eyes. Zara, I can't live with myself knowing that billions of people died because of our feelings for each other. Then we find a third option, Zara said, her crystal formations beginning to glow brighter. We find a way to save my people without destroying what we have. How? Your planet is dying. Your people won't cooperate, and you can't go back without risking your life. Zara was quiet for a moment, then suddenly her crystal formations blazed with brilliant light. Ryan had learned that this meant she was having what humans might call a moment of inspiration. What if they came here? She said excitedly. What? What if instead of me going back to unite them there, they came to Earth? Not all of them, just enough to preserve our species. Your planet could support a small population, and maybe working together, our peoples could solve both problems. Ryan felt a spark of hope. You think that could work? I don't know, Zara admitted, but it's worth trying. Dr. Rodriguez has been saying that Earth's governments want to establish formal relations with my people anyway. Maybe this crisis could become an opportunity instead of a tragedy. Over the next several days, Ryan watched Zara transform from a sad, conflicted refugee into a determined leader. She worked with Dr. Rodriguez and other scientists to develop a proposal that seemed impossible but might just work. The first interplanetary refugee program in human history. The plan faced enormous obstacles. Earth's governments were terrified of the security implications. Many of Zara's people considered it shameful to abandon their dying home world, and there was no guarantee that two completely different species could actually live together peacefully. But as Ryan watched Zara present her ideas to world leaders via video conference, he realized something important. She wasn't the same person who had crashed in the mountains weeks ago. She had found her true strength not by fulfilling her old, royal duties, but by choosing her own path and fighting for what she believed in. "The choice between duty and love is a false choice," Zara said during one particularly intense negotiation session. "Real leadership means finding ways to honor both. My duty is to save my people. My love is for this man and this world that welcomed me. I refuse to sacrifice either one." As the discussions continued and plans began to take shape, Ryan realized that their love story had become something much bigger than just two people from different worlds finding each other. It had become the foundation for an entirely new kind of civilization. But first, they had to convince two entirely different species that sometimes the impossible was just another word for not yet. 18 months later, Ryan stood on the observation deck of the New Zealand Integration Center, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. In the distance, he could see the distinctive crystal spires of the first permanent alien settlement on Earth, their surfaces catching the early morning light and scattering it into beautiful rainbow patterns across the valley. It still felt like a dream sometimes. The Integration Center had become the most important place on Earth, though it looked more like a peaceful university campus than the site of humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement. Scientists, engineers, artists, and philosophers from both species worked side by side in buildings that blended human architecture with Zephyrian crystal-growing technology. "You're up early again?" Zara said, coming up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. She was wearing one of his old sweaters, which looked comically small on her tall frame, but had become her favorite piece of human clothing. "Couldn't sleep," Ryan admitted, leaning back against her warmth. "Big day today." Today marked exactly 1 year since the first group of Zephyrian refugees had arrived on Earth. What started as an emergency evacuation of 50 individuals had grown into a carefully planned integration program that was changing both species in ways no one had expected. "Are you nervous about the ceremony?" Zara asked, her crystal formations glowing softly with the contentment that Ryan had learned. Meant she was truly happy. "A little," Ryan said. "A year ago, I was just a guy taking weather readings in the mountains. Now I'm supposed to give a speech to representatives from 12 different countries and 3 alien council members." Zara laughed. The musical sound, that still made Ryan's heart skip a beat. "A year ago, I was a runaway princess hiding in a crashed ship. Now I'm Earth's first interplanetary ambassador. I think we've both come a long way." The changes in Zara over the past year had been incredible to watch. Working with both human and Zephyrian leaders had brought out abilities she never knew she had. She had a gift for finding common ground between completely different ways of thinking, and her unique position as someone who belonged to both worlds made her invaluable in negotiations. But the most amazing change was in how she had learned to blend the best of both cultures. She had kept the Zephyrian respect for logic and efficiency, but she had also embraced human concepts like creativity, humor, and emotional expression. Watching her laugh at a silly movie or get excited about successfully growing tomatoes in the garden made Ryan fall in love with her all over again every day. "Dr. Rodriguez wants to see us before the ceremony," Zara said, checking the tablet that had become her constant companion. "Something about the latest medical reports." They walked hand in hand through the center's corridors, past laboratories where human and Zephyrian scientists were developing new technologies that neither species could have created alone. The refugees had brought knowledge of energy systems, medical techniques, and environmental restoration that was already helping solve some of Earth's biggest problems. In return, humans had shared art, music, literature, and most importantly, the concept of individual choice and emotional freedom that had been missing from Zephyrian culture for centuries. Dr. Rodriguez was waiting for them in her office, practically bouncing with excitement. Her desk was covered with printouts, charts, and what looked like brain scans. "I have news," she said before they could even sit down. "Good news. Amazing news, actually." "What kind of news?" Ryan asked, though he suspected he already knew. Over the past few months, he and Zara had been experiencing some unusual symptoms: shared dreams, the ability to sense each other's emotions from great distances, and occasionally even sharing thoughts without Zara using her crystal formations. "The neural bonding process has stabilized," Dr. Rodriguez said, pulling up a series of brain scans on her computer. "Not only that, but it's created something we've never seen before. You're not just emotionally connected anymore. You're developing a genuine telepathic link." Zara leaned forward to study the scans. "Is that normal?" "Nothing about your situation is normal," Dr. Rodriguez said with a grin. "But it's not dangerous. In fact, it seems to be making both of you stronger. Ryan, your cognitive abilities have increased dramatically. Zara, your emotional intelligence, something that was suppressed in your original culture, has developed far beyond what we thought possible." "So we're like evolved humans and aliens?" Ryan asked, trying to process the implications. "You're the first example of true interspecies symbiosis that we know of," Dr. Rodriguez said. "And the really exciting part is that the other mixed pairs are showing similar developments. Over the past year, several other human-Zephyrian friendships had developed into something deeper. It turned out that the neural compatibility wasn't unique to Ryan and Zara. Something about prolonged contact between the species seemed to create these bonds naturally." "There's something else," Dr. Rodriguez said, her expression becoming more serious. "The medical team has been studying the unusual development we detected last month." Ryan felt his heart start racing. 3 weeks ago, Zara had started experiencing symptoms that seemed impossible: fatigue, nausea, and changes in her bioluminescent patterns that the doctors couldn't explain. "We've confirmed it," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "Zara, you're pregnant." The room went completely silent except for the soft humming of electronic equipment. Ryan felt like the world had stopped spinning. "That's impossible," Zara whispered. "Our species are completely different biologically." "Impossible is a word we've had to redefine a lot lately," Dr. Rodriguez said gently. "The neural bonding process seems to have created genetic compatibility where none existed before. We don't understand how it works yet, but the evidence is undeniable." Ryan sank into his chair, overwhelmed. A baby, a child that was part human and part Zephyrian, representing the first true bridge between two worlds. Will it be healthy?" he managed to ask. "As far as we can tell, perfectly healthy," Dr. Rodriguez assured them. "The genetic combination seems to be taking the best traits from both species: enhanced intelligence, emotional sensitivity, and what appears to be natural telepathic abilities." Zara's crystal formations were blazing with light now, cycling through colors that Ryan had never seen before. He realized she was experiencing emotions too complex for her usual patterns to express. "We're going to have a baby," she said wonderingly, placing her hand on her stomach. "Our baby," Ryan said, reaching over to cover her hand with his. "The first child of two worlds." Later that evening, after the ceremony celebrating the first anniversary of the integration program, Ryan and Zara sat in their favorite spot in the garden behind their small house. The Zephyrian settlement glowed softly in the distance, while above them, Earth's familiar stars twinkled alongside the navigation lights of ships traveling between worlds. "Kale sent another message today," Zara said, resting her head on Ryan's shoulder. "Good news or bad news?" "Both," Zara replied. "The evacuation of our homeworld is complete. The last ships left just before the solar flares became too dangerous. But they found a new planet, one that can support our entire population," Ryan felt a mixture of relief and sadness. So, your people are safe. Safe and free to build a new society, Zara confirmed. And they're using the lessons we've learned here. Individual choice, emotional expression, cooperation instead of rigid hierarchy. Kale says it's like watching our people wake up from a 1,000-year sleep. And some of them want to stay here, Ryan added, thinking about the expanding settlement and the continued requests for immigration to Earth. This is home now, Zara said simply, for all of us who chose it. As they sat together under the stars, Ryan thought about the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a simple choice to help someone who needed it, and it had grown into something that changed the destiny of 2 entire species. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Giving up your old life, your royal title, everything you were supposed to be? Zara was quiet for a moment, her crystal formations pulsing gently with the rhythm that Ryan now knew matched her heartbeat. I gave up being who others wanted me to be, she said finally. But I found out who I really am. I found love, friendship, purpose, and now, she placed her hand on her stomach again. Now I'm going to be a mother to the first child of 2 worlds. Our child is going to grow up in an amazing universe, Ryan said, imagining a future where humans and Zephyrians work together to explore the stars, solve problems, and maybe even find other species who needed help. They're going to grow up knowing that love can bridge any distance, overcome any difference, and create possibilities that no one thought were possible, Zara agreed. In the distance, a ship was preparing for departure to the new Zephyrian homeworld, carrying supplies, messages, and a few humans who had chosen to help build a new civilization among the stars. At the same time, another ship was arriving with new refugees and immigrants who had chosen Earth as their new home. Ryan and Zara had started something that was bigger than both of them, a new kind of civilization where differences were celebrated instead of feared, where love was stronger than duty, and where the impossible just meant not yet.